Welcome to this live talk on non-duality. I'm Russ Rapp, and today, in this moment, we're going to discuss not defending non-duality. What does that mean? We're about to find out. This is a bit of an impromptu session here. I wasn't planning on jumping on and doing a live talk. But as we all know how life goes, plans that don't always go the way you want. Things sometimes are out of your control. And in this moment, the weather is not cooperating with what I had planned to do. And so I am here now making this video. If you have not yet subscribed to my channel, I've got a ton of other videos, a bunch of live talks that are kind of more long form discussions if you want to have kind of a longer, more detailed I was going to say rambling, but it's a way to kind of express my my thoughts on this topic in a way that is just kind of free flowing. Whatever comes up, and you can pull out little nuggets, and it can maybe be a relaxing way to listen to these talks. If you just kind of hear me talking, if use it as a meditative way, or if it helps you fall asleep at night, that's what these live talks can be good for. Putting you to sleep. Otherwise, I have a bunch of other videos on my channel that I've put a little bit more production into as far as crafting them and coming up with a more concise way of communicating this message of the non-message of non-duality. And my most popular video is the best method to achieve non-duality. So that's the one that most people probably find me in the first place, which is very telling as far as what people are looking to get out of this whole non-duality thing. So today, whatever day you are watching this, whether you're joining live right now or if you're watching this after the fact, the nice thing about subscribing is that you can find out, especially when I do more impromptu talks like this one, you can find out when it's happening, and so you can jump on board and ask questions or make comments in the chat, and I like to get your feedback there. And I try to do these on a somewhat consistent basis, but it's a little bit all over the map as far as time specific or the day. Typically, it seems like it's a Sunday, but it's one of those deals where if you subscribe, then you'll know when it's on. And maybe I haven't sold you on the value of joining and participating in these talks, so you don't even know what's the point of subscribing in the first place. But if you've come to non-duality, there's most likely you fit the bill as far as what kind of individual would find some value or find some meaning into what we're talking about. Although there's nothing to really get out of these messages from a human standpoint, we can connect and communicate and find fellowship in that in itself. So even though you're not really getting anything from the concept of non-duality, you're not really getting an understanding. You can maybe see some of the traps that you've fallen into, see the illusion that's presented, and be a little bit more flexible and free from that. The non-duality is kind of the conceptual basis of that freedom, of that sense that there is no floor. The rabbit hole goes on infinitely. It's turtles all the way down, that whole thing. That's kind of the concept of non-duality, and the basis for peeling back the onion, for releasing, for letting go. But what ends up happening is there is a focus on that letting go, of trying to reach some sort of sense of enlightenment, or a state of being, a state of non-dual awareness that's ever present, and this eternal peace that we're trying to achieve in this niche we call non-duality. If you're new to non-duality, it means not to. It's pretty much it. That's what you get. So you can save yourself time and not worry about subscribing and watching any more videos of non-duality. Essentially, what non-duality is saying is that there is not two, and that implies that there is no separation, or that separation essentially is an illusion. And we're communicating that through the separate self, the illusion itself. So we're saying that the matrix is an illusion while in the matrix, essentially. And there's no way to get out of the matrix. You're always plugged in. So that's funny. The inspiration for this video was from a comment that I received on one of my videos from the past that doesn't exist. So I'm going to pull that up and read it for you. Here we go. Because when it comes to non-duality, like with everything in life, as the saying goes, opinions are for a-holes, everyone has one. And so people have certain ideas, and when we talk about these things, there's this need or desire or a seeking energy of wanting to find the answers, of wanting to change your life, of wanting to be something different than what is currently being perceived. So when it comes to speakers of non-duality, or teachers, or whatever you want to call them, gurus of non-duality, like with any spiritual teaching, or it doesn't even have to be spiritual, any sort of field of expertise, there is a sense of wanting to get the information from the people that know what they're talking about, that exemplify the practice, or what the message of the teaching is trying to get across. And so people will look at speakers and say, are they speaking in a nice, calm tone that shows that they're at one with the universe, that they are at peace. They have this deep sense of peace that is unshakable, and that they look deep into the camera and talk directly to you and make you feel warm and fuzzy inside and appear as though they have no problems. And when problems arise, it's not them that's having the problem. It's not the person, because there is no person. It's the abstract objectification of the self by speaking in third person, or viewing themselves in third person, that things appear to happen, or things happen to no one. And so when I act like an a-hole to another person, I can justify that because there's no one doing it. It's not me. It's just what's happening. It's a verbing. It's not something I'm doing. So it's kind of taking the responsibility out of action, out of having a personal individual will, which when it comes to non-duality, I think you have to take it all the way to the infinite, all the way to the 0 point, where you say that there is no will, there is no person, to the extent where that whole message falls away and the person still exists and still is there. And so there is a responsibility for action, even though there isn't. It's the kind of the conundrum, the paradox of this message of non-duality. But I'm making you wait a little bit because this is the fun part of this discussion. And I guess I should maybe get as much enjoyment out of this as I do, but it's a little bit of a guilty pleasure for me. And I don't condone this behavior. I don't necessarily think it's a good thing as far as how we should approach communicating with one another on this topic, because I've been critical of other things and kind of poke fun at certain things when it comes to how other people describe non-duality, because oftentimes it becomes a thing in itself that you have to believe, that you have to try to achieve in order to have this state of perfection, a state of infinite peace. So when it comes to, I'm going to read a comment from someone on my video called Lies About Non-Duality. So I think just a little short commentary on that. When I make these live videos, I think YouTube doesn't recognize them in the same way that they make regular videos. And even if you describe, the video in a certain way that maybe will be good for the YouTube algorithm, it doesn't necessarily get picked up as much as a shorter, more concise video that people can consume. Because oftentimes, unless you're watching this live and you're just doing it, or you're putting it on to go to sleep at night, there's a window of time that people will be willing to watch these videos, especially ones on non-duality that really don't give you anything. It's people will only spend an average of X number of minutes on a video, and that's after you hook them. First you have to hook them in the first 10-20 seconds, and then once you got that hook into them to get them to watch a longer period of time, I don't know if it's what the average is right now, but if it's 10 minutes out of a 30-minute video, if you watch like a third of it, that's good. That's kind of the sweet spot. Most likely, you'll have people that'll watch the full video. You'll have people watch only a couple minutes. And when it comes to this message, it's kind of a long, drawn-out process. People can get bored because they want instant gratification. So you've maybe come here, you want to have the answer right away. The answer is this. This is what is. Can't get out of it. You're stuck. It's a prison. It's a prison of freedom. Because people want to get out of their ego, to get out of their current situation. So then there's this movement towards trying to free themselves from this situation. But right now I'm sitting in a room against a wall, window, some blinds, and there's a heater behind me with some pillows. And if I had this technology, I could be sitting in a prison cell right now. But what does that change about what is real from a physical standpoint? I mean, my situation may be different. Maybe I'm not eating as healthy, or my health is deteriorating, or I'm feeling alone or neglected, or whatever the situation, or I am angry or anxious. How am I going to get out of this prison? But at the end of the day, it's me sitting on a floor. So right now I'm sitting, maybe it's carpeted, so it's a little bit more comfortable with the pillows. And if I were sitting in a jail cell in prison, maybe there'd be a hard floor and it would be uncomfortable. There'd be a bunch of noise and I probably wouldn't have the ability to make videos. But at the same time, it would be me sitting on the floor. And that's kind of the situation you're in, whether you're laying down or sitting or standing. And there's the story that goes along with it that I wish the weather wasn't horrible. I wish things could be different, but that's a story, a thought. And so it's non-duality in a sense is seeing things from the lens of truth, from the lens of almost like a sober way to look at life, objective way to say, this is what I'm feeling, this is what I'm thinking, this is the story I'm telling myself, this is the experience, this is my perception of the world, this is what seems to be happening. But at the same time, that is an appearance, and it's not a way to lessen the impact of life. I think you can take that to say, well, everything's an illusion, so no big deal. But at the same time, that's kind of a cop-out. That's just a way to avoid real living, to have a deep contact, to have a direct contact with life in all of its ups and downs, not to abstractly pull away, to detach from life, to say that, well, nothing has meaning or everything's illusion, so what's the point? I don't need to worry about anything, because that's, as you'll probably find, itself an illusion, itself a lie that you just tell yourself to avoid uncomfortable situations or pain or suffering. So let's get to this. We're at 17 minutes now. So let's get to this comment from my video, Lies About Non-Duality. This comes from Felix is a Fox. And Felix says, okay, so before I read this, I just want you to get a sense for, what's the energy behind this comment on my video. And then I'm going to read you another comment, and then we'll do a comparison. And if you're joining here, feel free to chat a comment on what I read here. So Felix says, you have absolutely no idea what you're talking about. You're mixing concepts with totally unrelated concepts and spout some nonsense thinking you know the truth and others don't. It is clear from your words that you do not understand non-duality nor duality. I'd suggest doing some more research and meditate on it. To be expected from an iPhone user to be uninformed. So that's from Felix. So I thought that was a interesting comment that Felix made, and it kind of goes into this idea of non-defending non-duality. So there's really nothing in this message, in this concept of non-duality, that needs to be defended. And that doesn't necessarily mean that it can be explained incorrectly or correctly, because I think with any concept, there is a way that we're trying to communicate the message, or the way that we're trying to point to the truth of the concept. But at the same time, even if we say it and we get it totally wrong, non-duality is unaffected. It doesn't matter. So even if you're totally wrong in your understanding, your explanation of non-duality, at the end of the day, the beauty of non-duality is that it doesn't matter, because it changes nothing of the truth of this ever-present moment, the power of now, whatever you want to conceptually call it. Okay, so that was Felix's comment. And then we're going to go to there's more replies. Okay, well, so so I should probably read my response to Felix. What I said was, what specifically about my explanation of non-duality did I get wrong? How would you define non-duality? How would you define non-duality? So I haven't yet to receive a reply on that. So then we're going to go to from my live talk, my most recent one, Non-Duality, Faith or Works video. I received a comment from Evident Non-Ownership. So the handle is Evident Non-Ownership. And this is what Evident says. I have found that what I called life is an experience, the same as what we call presence. This is the ungraspable truth, the movement and the still. When I turn to life, I turn to presence. I put life truth first. For the longest time, the questions of who, what, and why were so sticky. Now, not so much. When I am with the taken step in presence, there is only this life, this movement, this joy. My joy or peace in this freedom is a reaction of the mind to the real, which gives birth to it. It is born of truth. Life becomes the way. The path is the very next step. The question of who takes the step and why can fall away. It is simply the step that is being taken, the movement of life, the truth, not I, not other. I take the hand of God, yet there is never two. If there is bliss to be had, or the joy of peace and freedom, then these things are presented in the real. They are gravitated towards by the mind, just as it would to false things of imagination. Yet these things are given freely in rest, the simplest things of which one can find so much in a day. I'm late for bed now, We'll watch the rest of this video tomorrow. All the best. And I responded, beautifully written, poetic. Yes, we choose what we focus on, living a life of prayer and devotion, or one of stress and anxiety, with the blessing that either way we are loved and we are love. And Evident wrote back, when I'm reading this for the first time, in regards to faith, there is a strong belief or faith that to put life first, to rest in that, is the truth. As I listened to you talk this morning, which I enjoyed connecting with, I also remembered the roaring of the bathroom fan. I suppose it is faith or belief which turns to the attention to grounding in presence, to home, in which all seems equally presented, so as to even display the inside as the out. And Evident goes on to say, I like to think I come to all this from a factual point of view, but then it all can just seem so poetic. An hour ago, I took a moment from work where I stood and looked up at the big old oak tree. I noticed how the branches turned to twigs, splayed out against the sky, always reaching out open to all that may present itself. It kind of resembles the interconnections of the brain to look at. I realized I also felt this way in presence. Then as I looked down the trunk, I saw it was our roots. Presence was my ground. If the tree pulled up its roots, it would close up and wither, just as I would close up to life. I mean, how good is that? So, I have an opinion. I have a judgment on both of those comments. But you can kind of get a sense of the energy behind it. And I think, just the poetic nature of how that is written. I think that, the way we discuss it or the way I talk about it in these videos is very, very kind of conceptual, very analytical as far as talking about concepts and the meaning of words and stuff like that. And I think that is what people oftentimes are drawn to, those types of debates about what it means, having an intellectual understanding of non-duality. And that's all well and good. I think that's what oftentimes people are drawn to, trying to know. It's this idea of gnosis, of trying to learn something. And that's something I'm predisposed to as well, I think. So that's kind of where we are met. But I think non-duality can be understood in other ways, whether it's emotionally or through poetry or through the body or just in every moment. There's this sense of connection that can never be broken. And so even when I have anxiety or concern, or I'm focused on, what the future is going to hold, and life isn't quite going the way I expected. Whether it's the weather that's throwing a monkey wrench in my plans, there's always another way. It's like the key maker in the Matrix. There's always another way. There's always another door that can be opened. And so whether I'm out doing what I had planned to do, or I'm here now making this video, that's what happens. And I think so often people want to view this message from someone that seems to have no problems or concerns. And I think a lot of times it's kind of like with celebrities, putting people on a pedestal to say, this person has something I don't, this person is something that I'm not. And they have this, je ne sais quoi, this something, this spark, this it factor that makes them elevated above me. And so oftentimes with celebrities and stuff, we put them, and there's obviously reasons for that when people are talented at their craft, and we put them on pedestals. And that's something as a culture we tend to idolize, we tend to value, is that type of individual, the celebrity. But it goes with spiritual type leaders as well, or people that talk about non-duality. It's, we want to see them in a certain light, but I think oftentimes it's so. Here's an example. If you watch the show Community, the comedy show, there's one episode where Donald Glover, his character gets the opportunity to meet LeVar Burton from Reading Rainbow and what, Star Trek and whatever else. But it was the whole Reading Rainbow that they were focused on in the episode. But he basically shuts down because he idolized LeVar Burton, but he never wanted to meet LeVar Burton in real life because he didn't want his concept, his idolization of LeVar Burton, to be tarnished in any way. And that's where I think oftentimes people come to this message or any type of teaching like this, where they want to idolize the person, the messenger, versus the message itself. And so there's this concept of, well, I want to have what this person has. And so if I believe, or if I perceive that this individual who's speaking about non-duality has this life that I want, or has this sense of peace where there's nothing seems to go wrong, or when it does, it's constant letting go of every situation that is comes up or arises, that is this sense of infinite peace that I want to have in my life. I would be curious, if you were to meet those people in your everyday life, if you would have a different perspective on the matter. I feel, I don't know how I'm perceived, and my whole shtick is to kind of just be your average person. I guess that's kind of, and that's just, I guess, a natural thing for me. But I'm aware of that. I don't want to be larger than life necessarily when it comes to this whole topic, because I think it's the infinite, it's the ultimate equalizer. It's the idea that we're all in this together. That whole thing. But it's this idea that we all have the same situation. The fact that we seem to be living implies the fact that we will die. So we're always in the rat race, in the wheel of life that ultimately will break down and we will die. And coming to terms with that truth. So I wanted to read a little bit that goes along with what we're talking about now from the Bible. In Ecclesiastes chapter 9, I wanted to read a little bit of chapter 9, which I think really relates to what we were just talking about, as far as we have the same basic experience as humans on earth, that we appear to live a life that gets through time, and that we end up in the same place. Yeah. So this is this is Ecclesiastes chapter 9, and the title of the section or the chapter is, no, it's just the section, the common destiny for all. So chapter 9, verses 1 through, let's read 1 through 10. So I reflected on all this and concluded that the righteous and the wise and what they do are in God's hands. But no man knows whether love or hate awaits him. All share a common destiny, the righteous and the wicked, the good and the bad, the clean and the unclean, those who offer sacrifices and those who do not. As it is with the good man, so with the sinner. As it is with those who take oaths, so with those who are afraid to take them. This is the evil in everything that happens under the sun. The same destiny overtakes all. The hearts of men, moreover, are full of evil, and there is madness in their hearts while they live, and afterward they join the dead. Anyone who is among the living has hope. Even a live dog is better off than a dead lion. For the living know that they will die, but the dead know nothing. They have no further reward, and even the memory of them is forgotten. Their love, their hate, and their jealousy have long since vanished. Never again will they have a part in anything that happens under the sun. Go, eat your food with gladness, and drink your wine with a joyful heart, for it is now that God favors what you do. Always be clothed in white, and always anoint your head with oil. Enjoy life with your wife, whom you love, all the days of this meaningless life that God has given you under the sun, all your meaningless days. For this is your lot in life, and in your toilsome labor under the sun. Whatever your hand finds to do, do it with all your might. For in the grave, where you are going, there is neither working, nor planning, nor knowledge, nor wisdom. I mean, how perfect is that? I mean, that's the message of non-duality right there. So any comments or questions of what we've talked about so far, or if you're just now joining, it's anything you want to. I think we covered a lot of the idea of not defending non-duality, because ultimately there's nothing to defend. Because if you were to explain non-duality to someone and say, well, it's this present moment that is always there, it's however you want to describe it, it's the now, then the ultimate response is, okay, well, so what? It's kind of the combination of the so what, or the yes but. The yes but is, yeah, but, and never quite buying into what you're saying. And that's how the mind oftentimes works, is you think you understand something, but then there's always, let me open that door just a little bit and say, well, yeah, but I'm never quite satisfied. I'm always seeking for something. I'm always seeking for a better answer, or a deeper answer, or the ultimate truth. And that's the yes, but, or the so what. It's like, okay, well, this is the moment that we've always experienced. This is the aliveness. This is what the Bible is talking about, the meaningless liveness, the idea that what is happening is part of the active love of existence. And so there's never been that outside of that moment. There's never been outside of the presence. Oftentimes that's what people um, connect with when it comes to the moment, the present moment, the now, which there isn't really a now, because that's just a definition that comes after the fact that occurs in the now. So it's not something that you can really grasp anyway. So it's kind of pointing to the same basic thing of non-duality. But when you tell someone, okay, well, this is the moment, so you've never been outside of this moment, that's the nugget of wisdom from non-duality, then the response could be, well, so what do I get out of that? So okay, so you're telling me that there's only this moment. Okay, well, do I, if I focus on this moment, am I more powerful because I'm more present and I can operate in life more effectively because I'm not distracted with other things? Perhaps. But then, okay, well, the mind would say, well, what's wrong with, looking in the past? Because if we don't understand the past, we're doomed to repeat it. Or why can't we look into the future and make plans? Like, I want to plan my life. I want to get from point A to point B. So what's the point? What's wrong with that? So what is non-duality even giving me? What am I getting out of this? Because you're just saying that this is a moment that's always there and I'm never going to not be in the moment. Well, if I can't not be in the moment, why do I worry about trying to be in the moment? What's the point? Exactly. So there's nothing to defend. And even if, someone says, well, there's this state of being of perfect non-duality that you can achieve when you let go this false self or the separate self or the ego, or it all drops away. It's like, well, how does that happen? The typical response would be, well, there's nothing you can do because there is no person. It just appears to happen. Like the falling away, the letting go happens. Okay, well, there's nothing you can do. So what's the point? So what? So if I can't do anything to get into this state of non-dual, perfect, pure awareness or whatever you want to call it, then there's no point. There's no point. This is pointless. This is meaningless. This whole discussion of non-duality is pointless because I can't do anything to get there. I want to have this infinite, perfect awareness. I want to live in an eternal state of peace where I don't have any perceivable problems, or pain and suffering is an illusion, or however you want to describe it, or things are happening that are painful, but it's not happening to anyone. But I can't do anything to get to that point. Okay, well, then there's nothing to defend because there's nothing to do to get there. And if you say, well, okay, well, there's non-duality, but there's something like in Felix's comment. Let me read that again. Felix said, you don't understand non-duality or nor duality. I suggest doing more research and meditate on it. So his example of a solution is to, since I don't have an understanding of this topic, is to meditate on it. And then I will find more wisdom or more truth. Okay, so meditation is the answer. So what if that doesn't work? Then you're not doing it right. Okay, well, so let's say I do meditation and I find the ultimate truth. So now this vessel, this body, this mind body, spirit, whatever you want to say, this soul body, this entity, this energy body, now is free. Now has meditated, and now has this sense of expansion, an expanse of knowing everything, of being a part and connected to the universe, to what is, because I meditated and now I have this epiphany awakening that will never go away. What about you? So this is something now that I have that you don't. So I did the proper, I went through the levels, the OT levels. I went through the channels, and now I have this experience of this pure non-dual awareness state that you don't have. So now it's all about me. So it's about the self versus the other. So the self, me, Russ Rapp, now has something that you don't have. So congratulations to me. the truth of non-duality is that it isn't ever present. It isn't absolute. It isn't timeless. It isn't infinite. It isn't any of that, because it's something that you can take ownership of, that you can have, that someone else cannot have. It's not something that you can achieve and that you can have a higher status. So it's kind of the communist dream of the elite few versus the entire poor masses. And so you have this idea that I am elevated, I am on this other level, and everyone else is an idiot, essentially. So that's what ends up happening, is you put yourself on a pedestal to say, I have achieved this epiphany, you haven't. And it's a binary type of, it's a dualistic type of relationship, where it's either you have it or you don't. So I have it and you don't. There's no stages. Like I've been watching a documentary on Scientology that Leah Remini put out, and it's pretty excellent. We've watched the first season, but it kind of delves into the cult-like aspects of Scientology, and how there's all these levels that you have to work your way through, and so it's kind of a money generating scheme. And then if you reach the ultimate pinnacle of perfection, then you still have to go back and do it over again for whatever reason they give you, and you have to pay for everything the whole time. But it also gets into how kind of cults work, as far as they call people that go against Scientology suppressive persons. So you're a suppressive person if you speak poorly, or if you separate from the church. So if you say, I'm no longer a Scientologist, and this is why, and I'm critical of Scientology, then the church itself and the followers essentially cut you off. So then you have to what's the right word? Not detach. You have to disconnect. Can't remember the lingo, but basically the idea is that the person that you used to call family, used to be in a relationship with to some extent, the church is always above all of that, and that's your allegiance. But when someone criticizes it and gets essentially kicked out of the circle, then they become the ultimate enemy, and they become almost a non-person, a non-human that you can see as ultimately evil. And the response to that is to completely cut yourself off from that. So then there's no communication between those that criticize versus those that believe. And so there's this sense that you have to have a perfect allegiance, a perfect dogmatic belief in what Scientology is teaching, and the practices that are pushed. And so right there, that's one aspect of how you connect, you separate yourself from that connection with others in order to uphold the belief system, versus challenging and deepening your understanding of your own religion or other religions through understanding the connections that are there. And that's where it's a really good, if you haven't seen the series, I would recommend watching some of it, because I think it's really good, and to show how the separate self, how the mind ultimately works when it comes from a social engineering standpoint of cult type behaviors. And so when you see yourself closing off from others and other opinions that maybe go against what you stand for, what you believe, then you question that. Because there's one thing that you hold strong to your faith and your beliefs and all of that, and aren't swayed easily. But on the flip side, if what you believe has any real value, you should have the ability to be criticized, to look at other points of view. Otherwise, your beliefs are on shifting sands, essentially, where it's not strong in the first place. But you have to be a true believer, because if you uh, go outside of that little bubble that you created, that box that you put yourself in, then it all falls apart. And that's kind of how the ego works, the separate self works in a societal or group setting. So the group and the individual operate in a lot of the same ways. And it's the same way, you can watch the Scientology show and see how that relates to, how battered wives or abusive husbands, let's say, control them. So they cut themselves off from their friends and family. They shame them. There's the gaslighting and all of that can take place. There's maybe the physical, emotional abuse. There's the dependency where I control the finances. The wife doesn't have a job. There's a sense of total control. So then in order to break or to separate from that relationship, that abusive relationship, it seems like impossible to the person. And then there's the whole idea of confusing the idea of abuse and love and seeing that value in the other. And so then in that situation, the wife only sees their value because it's given to them from this other person. And it's kind of a lot of the same tactics and a lot of the same structure that goes along with the whole thing. And a lot of it is separating yourself from others. Azus, welcome. Azus says, that is the best answer I've ever heard. And of course, the perfect way to make someone understand. Well, I've kind of been talking for a while since I think you wrote that. So I'd be curious what specifically maybe I was kind of referring to, but I appreciate your positive feedback. But I think the key is, if you hold strongly in your beliefs, because if you don't stand for anything, you'd fall for anything. That's kind of that cliche saying is, you have to have strong, deeply held beliefs, but there's always this, empty floor. There's always this, from a openness to experience to having a free thinking mind. There's always this openness to other possibilities. And so even if you believe something with just utter abandonment, is that the right phrase? Deeply believe something, even if you're like in a cult like Scientology, there's always a crack in those beliefs there's always a window that's left slightly open that offers that opportunity to question those beliefs and to really see things from other perspectives. But that doesn't mean not holding strong beliefs are a bad thing. But it's more so, the framework that you see other things. And so I think kind of mentioned this in other videos, but when you look at other alternative information or other opinions or belief systems that go against or different than what you believe in, then there's a sense of a way to evaluate that you can say, this seems to be correct, or maybe that just seems just totally off. And so there's not much influence on your belief system. But I think that kind of puts it in to the other perspective to have a little bit more of a responsibility to have an effect on to make change, to make that connection, if you will. Meaning, here's as an example with the Scientology situation, I have a opinion on Scientology, partly based on the documentary series, but on the same time, I'm open to possibilities of there's more complexity to that story. It's not as simple, but that doesn't mean I'm going to sign up to be a Scientologist. I think that door is mostly closed. But at the same time, there's this openness, and that's where for me it's the fact that they're totally closed off. They have to have a certain perception in the public. They cut off their their parishioners or their members from the outside world other alternative information that goes against that shows Scientology in maybe a negative light, or in a way that they don't want to have their members see. And so that in itself is something that I don't value, that I think is a negative thing. And so if that were to have changed, maybe there's a different story, because obviously the people that get into Scientology oftentimes do it because they see the world that's currently around them in a negative light, and they want to find something that is connects them to something bigger. It's getting outside of the everyday experience, and working towards something that has meaning and purpose. And I think that's what organizations like that appear to try to provide. And so then you get into the group because you want to make the world a better place. You want to work on yourself, to self-improve, personal development, and that's a lot of what people want to do in general. The flip side is it can turn into a cult. But with non-duality, it's not something you have to believe. There's nothing to defend. This is what is. There you go. All right. Well, we're getting to the end. Jesus, if you want to comment on, I was just curious what the best answer you've heard on non-duality, or what I was talking about. But if, to Jesus's point, you can go back and watch this whole thing if you're joining late, and see what I talked about. And that's a funny thing. The other part about not defending non-duality is, I've watched some of my videos over again, but most of my videos I haven't watched back, or it's been a long time. So a lot of times if someone's critical on a video, like the lies about non-duality, I maybe watched that somewhat after I made it. But I don't know if I did or not. But it's one of those things where people can say, "Oh, everything you're saying is so dumb, and you don't know what you're talking about." It's like, I honestly don't know what I'm talking about, because I don't remember what's in the video. I'm sure it was pretty good, So there's really nothing to defend if you don't even know what you're defending. And that's where, if you are critical thinking, it's one of those things where you have to produce specific things that you're trying to criticize, you're trying to debate. And so if you just ad hominem attack and say you're an idiot, you don't know what you're talking about, you're really doing a disservice for constructive communication. It's better to say, okay, this specifically is what I disagree with, and then there's something that you can hold out and say, and objectify and say, this is what I don't agree with. This is what I think is wrong. This is a fact, piece of information. This is what I think is untrue. And then there can be a conversation about that, and trying to form that idea that you're trying to debate in a way that is honest to what the other person is saying, instead of building like a straw man type of an argument to say, well, this is what you're saying, and that's not what the person is saying. So then you attack the idea that's never really being produced. So if you're honest and open about saying, well, I disagree on this particular idea or concept or fact, that's how we can really pinpoint and have a discussion or debate on that, because we know what we're looking at. Because you can take a topic and there's so much to it, it's so complex, then you get lost, and you end up talking past each other or talking about different things. You're never really focusing on the few ideas that you want to really discuss and to really pick apart, if you will. So that's where it can be helpful to say, well, I think you don't know what you're talking about. Okay, well, what specifically do I not am I not talking about? And that's where what I like about non-duality is it doesn't really matter. So if you're talking about other things in life that it's more fact-based or event-based, where you can point to something and say, this is true or this is not true, and have a more objective stance on the 3D perceptible world, then you can really use that idea as far as really focusing on whether something is true or not. But when it comes to non-duality, it doesn't really matter. So it kind of shines a light or holds up the mirror to the idea that this is how your mind operates. This is how your personality structure works, where you want to debate something, but you're doing it in a way that is a disservice to, active, positive communication. Azus says, it was a reply you gave to Felix. Oh, yeah. Azus says, this one, let's say I meditated and become one with the universe, but what now it means, and that I have something that you don't. Yeah, exactly. So yeah, that whole thing of me doing something and having something that you don't, it's like with anything in life, there is that apparent separation where, if I can run a mile in under 4 minutes, or is that the time frame? I don't know. Whatever, the 4 minute mile, is that what it is? And I can do it, and I was the only one to do it. I don't know what the record is now. I could have a saying to say, this is what you need to do to train to get to the point of running a 4 minute mile, because I have that experience. I have that, award. I have that record that I could point to and say, hey, I know something. I did something that you didn't do. And so then that's where my expertise on the matter comes into play. But when it comes to non-duality, something that we all have that's ever present, there is nothing that you can do that you can say, I'm a better this or that. I mean, there's a way to communicate better to people and try to get a concept across. But even if you fail at it, or if you're saying it incorrectly, when it comes to this topic, it changes nothing to reality. It changes nothing to the truth or the what is, essentially. All right, well, it is about time for me to wrap this thing up. I appreciate your comments, Jesus. Thanks for those who have joined. If you're a little shy about making comments, there's no reason to be shy. But if you are shy, that's fine too. I like the chats, because after I get through kind of what I want to say, it helps keep the conversation going and adds a little bit of richness to what we're talking about, because then it's something that you actually care about or are confused about or want to have clarification on. And so it's good. So Romans 8:28, and we know that in all things God works for the good of those who love him, who have been called according to his purpose. Thanks for joining.